The Hall of Trials rested inside a drifting station that circled a pale blue star, and its walls glowed with quiet light that shifted like slow water, while the many species of the League filled the tiers in a tense hush as they waited for the contest that would decide the future of training across the spiral. At the center stood a wide platform made from layered alloys and energy fields, and upon it a line of recruits from many worlds, who had been gathered to test a new doctrine of tactical learning that promised to cut years of study into days through live simulation and rapid challenge. Among them stood a lone human known simply as Alex, who wore a plain suit of training cloth that hid a body shaped by gravity and labor, while eyes steady as cold steel took in every angle of the platform with calm focus. The instructor was a tall being with skin like polished stone and eyes that shone with ancient experience. As she raised one long arm in the crowd, they leaned forward in anticipation of the signal that would start the test. The rules had been shared in a dozen tongues, as each recruit would be dropped into a shifting combat scenario where threats could appear from any direction, and victory would go to the one who adapted the fastest. Many of the recruits had trained for years within their own cultures of war and discipline, yet this was the first time they would face such a strange shared arena, where physics and probability bent to the will of a central mind. Alex breathed slow and deep, while recalling every lesson from a life that had not been shaped by galactic academies, but by the harsh push of survival on a small blue world, where storms and conflict forced creativity into every decision. The instructor brought her arm down and shouted "Begin" with a voice that rang like metal on stone. Before any of the other recruits even shifted their stance, the platform flared with light, and then went still as the instructor lowered her arm and declared the trial concluded. A wave of disbelief rolled through the crowd as dozens of eyes turned back to the platform, where Alex stood alone with a faint glow fading around him, while the rest of the recruits found themselves frozen in the first moment of a simulation that had never fully formed. The instructor studied Alex with a gaze that mixed surprise and something like respect as she asked how he had ended the scenario before it could begin. Alex answered with simple words as he explained that the simulation was built to read intent, and that by acting before the system could finalize its first threat, he had forced it into a loop that resolved in immediate victory. The League observers murmured among themselves as they realized that a mind shaped by human chaos had found a flaw that centuries of refined doctrine had missed. The story of how Alex came to this moment began far from the shining station on a world where humans had once stood alone against both nature and themselves. That world had been scarred by fire and flood, and yet its people had learned to build cities that scraped the sky, and machines that could think, which had forced them to become both creators and warriors in equal measure. Alex had grown in a place where every day brought a new challenge, and where the only way to survive is to learn fast and adapt faster, which was why when the League opened its doors to human recruits, he had stepped forward without hesitation. On the long voyage to the station, he had studied the manuals provided by the League, and found them thorough yet rigid, while he also studied the subtle hints in their language that suggested how their systems truly worked. He noticed that their simulations relied on predictive models that assumed a certain delay between signal and action, which was something no human in a real fight could afford. So when the moment came, Alex had simply acted with intent so sharp and so immediate that the system had no time to generate an opposing force which had caused it. To default to a resolved state, the instructor turned to the gathered recruits and announced that the trial would be reset with new parameters, while she kept Alex on the platform as a living example of why adaptation mattered more than tradition. The other recruits, now aware that the human had seen something they had not, began to watch him with a mix of curiosity and unease. When the second trial began, the platform transformed into a maze of shifting walls and rising hazards, where energy bolts flew from unseen turrets and robotic foes emerged from hidden panels. This time the recruits moved in a flurry of practiced tactics, while Alex moved with a fluid grace that looked almost casual as he ran toward danger instead of away from it. He used the environment as a tool by sliding under closing walls and leaping across gaps that would have stopped those with less trust in their own bodies. Where others fired at every target, Alex waited until he saw patterns in the motion of the turrets and then disabled them. With precise strikes that conserved energy and time, the simulation responded by increasing the difficulty as larger constructs emerged and the maze began to collapse in on itself. Yet Alex remained focused as his mind mapped every change in real time. One by one, the other recruits were overwhelmed by the shifting chaos and were removed from the field until only Alex remained, standing in a storm of light and motion. When the final construct fell, the platform returned to its calm state, and the Instructor declared Alex the clear victor of the trial. The crowd erupted in a mix of awe and debate as the implications of a single human outperforming so many seasoned recruits rippled through the league in the days that followed. Alex was invited to speak with the council that oversaw training across dozens of worlds, where elders of many species questioned him about his methods. He spoke not of secret techniques or advanced technology, but of a mindset that embraced uncertainty and used it as a source of strength. On his world, plans rarely survived contact with reality, and so humans had learned to improvise and to see opportunity in chaos, which was something the League had tried to control rather than harness. The Council began to realize that their own doctrines had become too rigid, and that, by integrating human adaptability, they could create a new generation of warriors and explorers who could thrive in the unknown. Alex was offered a position as a lead instructor, despite his youth, which he accepted, not out of pride, but out of a desire to see his people contribute to a greater whole. As he took on this role, he worked with the League to redesign their simulations to reward creativity and rapid decision-making instead of rote response. Recruits from many worlds found the new systems challenging, yet exhilarating, as they were forced to think in new ways, to trust their instincts. Through this process, humans earned a reputation as unpredictable yet reliable allies whose ability to turn the tide of any situation made them invaluable. The instructor who had first called continued to watch Alex with keen interest as she saw how a single moment of insight had sparked a transformation that would echo across the stars. Years later, when conflicts arose that threatened the balance of the spiral, it was often human-led teams that were sent to resolve them, because they could adapt to conditions that no plan could foresee. Alex himself would look back on that first trial with a quiet smile as he remembered how a simple act of thinking ahead had changed not only his own path, but the course of an entire alliance. The lesson of that day spread through the League as a reminder that even the most advanced systems could be outpaced by a mind willing to move before the signal was given. In this way, humanity carved out its place among the stars, not through brute force alone, but through a relentless drive to learn and to act in the moment. And so the story of the instructor who ended a trial before it began became a legend told to every new recruit as a symbol of what was possible when courage met creativity. Across the endless dark between worlds, that legend inspired countless beings to look beyond their training and to embrace the unknown with open eyes. For in a universe that changed with every heartbeat, the true measure of strength was not how well one followed the rules, but how well one could break them when it mattered. Thus the human spirit found its home among the stars, proving that even in the vastness of space, a single idea could shape the fate of many. And somewhere on a drifting station, under a pale blue star, an instructor would always remember the day a quiet human named Alex showed her that the future belonged to those who were ready before anyone else could move.